just as so many of us could see coming a mile away, this movie ended up being a nightmare for Disney.
In a shocking turn of events, reports have emerged that Rachel Zegler has left the country after Disney executives made an unprecedented demand for a refund on parts of her salary. This unexpected development comes amid growing tensions on the set of the highly anticipated Snow White adaptation, casting a cloud over the production. The dramatic unfolding has sent shockwaves through the industry, with many questioning the behind-the-scenes conflicts that led to this stunning situation.
There's no doubt at all that they spent well over $300 million just on the production of this movie. That doesn't include the marketing cost.
The drama has overshadowed any hope for a smooth and triumphant release of the Snow White remake. While much of the public focus has been on Rachel Zegler's reported clash with co-star Gal Gadot, insiders now suggest that the real issue lies with the money. Specifically, the funds Disney invested in reshoots and promotional appearances. Rumors are circulating that a clause in Zegler's contract allowed Disney to request partial repayment of her salary, which may have sparked this sudden and unexpected turn of events.
Leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for. This is called adult responsibility and accountability.
Amid production disruptions, significant financial losses mounted due to a series of canceled appearances, costly retakes, and ongoing disputes. As a result, the film's budget reportedly spiraled out of control, prompting the studio to activate a clause in Rachel Zegler's contract. This clause allowed them to demand partial repayment of her salary. From the moment it was announced that Zegler would star alongside Gal Gadot in a reimagined version of a classic Disney fairy tale, tensions seemed to build, ultimately leading to these financial challenges.
And the changes that Disney made to a classic story, a beloved animated classic, it wasn't going to go over.
The project quickly gained immense attention, with early discussions positioning it as a bold, modern reimagining of Snow White. The film was seen as a fresh take that would maintain the heart of the beloved story while weaving in new lessons, tailored to today's audiences. There was a strong sense of optimism about blending the fairy tale magic of the original with a progressive twist that would resonate with a generation accustomed to live-action reboots.
Look no further than what Disney is doing with their woke, DEI, feminist agenda.
Behind the scenes, however, tension quickly surfaced. The two co-stars reportedly disagreed on how the film should address contemporary social and political issues. While Disney had encouraged a modern approach in the script rewrite, it hadn't anticipated the leading actresses would hold such vocal and differing views on real-world matters. This clash of perspectives created a rift that affected the production dynamics.
What the Disney company is all about when you hire someone like Rachel Zegler, who creates a lot of chaos behind the scenes, and how that really leads to the co-stars beginning to get very frustrated.
Early in production, rumors began to swirl about heated debates on set, with tensions escalating far beyond simple creative differences. One of the major controversies involved an event celebrating Gal Gadot. The actress hosted an extravagant gathering in her honor, and Disney representatives hoped both she and Rachel Zegler would attend to show unity and solidarity. However, the situation quickly became more complicated.
Nobody is buying tickets to see Snow White. We have a popular movie theater in Southern California where a total of 4 tickets have been sold ahead of the March 20th release.
Instead, Zegler chose to stay away, publicly expressing strong objections to the political statements made during the event, which she felt were fundamentally at odds with her own beliefs. This decision reportedly enraged studio executives, who had hoped for a public display of unity between the two actresses to help quell the growing rumors of on-set tensions.
It would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie. And Disney was not sending its best.
The tension that day was so palpable that it carried over into subsequent promotional photo sessions. Photographers and marketing specialists have described the atmosphere as thick with discomfort. At one point, Rachel Zegler allegedly criticized Gal Gadot's demeanor during a shoot, calling it inappropriate given the ongoing public controversy surrounding the production.
Now, people were already prepared for this movie to be far left, woke, terrible.
Sources reveal that after a brief exchange of words, Zegler stormed off the set, halting work and leaving the crew scrambling to salvage the session. Incidents like this weren't isolated. According to insiders, these flare-ups occurred repeatedly, throughout production, continuing well into the post-production phase. As a result, reshoots became more frequent and costly, further escalating the challenges the film faced.
After one hell of a PR tour, Disney's live-action Snow White is finally, I know, you're wondering, it's going to be hitting movie theaters next week. And that brings us to, you know what, today there's so much to get into culturally.
Creative
It's time for
disputes
entertainment.
compounded by personal tensions led to entire sequences being filmed multiple times. Editors, visual effects artists, and scheduling managers found themselves caught in a constant tug-of-war between the demands of the two stars, and the studio's frantic efforts to salvage what had turned into a massive financial gamble. With each misstep, the cost of Snow White continued to spiral out of control.
And you have parents looking at Disney being like, what are you doing, guys? This is supposed to be a place where magic happens, and all you're doing is indoctrinating kids, and you're having this person be the poster child.
As negative publicity began to seep into fan communities, Disney started projecting lower box office returns. Audiences who adored the classic film were already hesitant about a live-action remake that might stray too far from its whimsical origins. The ongoing drama between Zegler and Gadot only fueled further cynicism. As advance ticket sales began to trickle in, they failed to meet the optimistic targets set by Disney's forecasting team.
Look no further than what Disney is doing with their woke, DEI, feminist
Watch this
agenda.
shit.
Gal Gadot, who had initially believed her star power would ensure the project's success, found herself dragged into a controversy she no longer wished to address. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler argued that the film's moral message and her own personal beliefs had been overshadowed by what she described as corporate greed. Publicly, she began emphasizing that the movie was meant to be a lesson for the audience, focusing on its deeper values rather than the surrounding turmoil.
Tell me if this is attractive to you. Like, does this, imagine you invested into her being the face of the movie, and she's the main character and she's trying to promote the movie. Would this make you want to go watch the movie when she's starring in it and she's the main character?
The film was intended as a commentary on modern injustices, and while that message resonated with some viewers, others felt it clashed with the nostalgic tone typically expected from a Disney classic. Beyond the clash of personalities, a deeper, ideological divide became painfully apparent, highlighting stark differences in vision for the film's direction.
Not only has she destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of IP for Disney, but she also has destroyed her career and the careers of anybody who worked on the movie.
Gal Gadot's global perspective, shaped by her own experiences, contrasted sharply with Rachel Zegler's more outspoken stance against certain political positions. This could have remained a private matter if the tensions hadn't spilled into promotional events. However, the friction became impossible to ignore during press conferences and interviews. In an attempt to manage the situation, studio executives intervened by issuing talking points and cautioning each star on how to address sensitive topics.
We'll still offend the dwarves, but we'll CGI dwarves. So we'll guarantee no employment for little people while getting rid of this other component that warranted CGI. It was the worst decision they could possibly make.
Despite efforts to calm the brewing animosity, nothing seemed to ease the tension. Both women were expected to make joint appearances on talk shows, red carpet events, and special screenings to showcase their on-screen chemistry. Unfortunately, synergy was the last thing audiences noticed. Public appearances together were marked by awkward body language and palpable tension, only fueling further speculation. Rumors began circulating that Gal Gadot was pushing for a darker, more intense tone in some of her scenes, further adding to the mounting friction.
You could look at the fact that she has been sabotaging this film for years at this point, all in this sort of pursuit of entitlement.
Rachel Zegler saw Gal Gadot's push for a darker tone as a direct challenge to Snow White's moral high ground in the story. Then came the reshoots. While studios typically schedule additional filming sessions to refine certain aspects, insiders describe these reshoots as extensive and chaotic. Entire segments had to be reworked to address the obvious lack of chemistry between the leads. Scenes that were meant to showcase a captivating dynamic between Snow White and the evil queen ended up feeling disjointed when tested in rough cuts.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
The studio pinned its hopes on the idea that curiosity about a fresh take on a classic could still draw a crowd, even if the two leads couldn't stand each other. However, the media narrative had already shifted from the film's creative vision to the behind-the-scenes turmoil, turning the project into a fiasco that overshadowed any artistic innovation it might have had. It was at this point that the rumored contract clause came to light. While it's not uncommon for actors to face financial penalties if they fail to meet publicity-related contractual obligations, this particular clause became a focal point amid the mounting drama.
All in this sort of pursuit of entitlement.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is,
saved by the prince.
she's not going to be saved by the prince.
Disney's alleged demand for a refund is an unusual move, sources say. The studio's justification reportedly centered around Rachel Zegler's repeated unavailability and her high-profile conflicts with Gal Gadot, which had severely hindered the yacht marketing campaign. Rather than generating excitement, promotional events devolved into gossip about the interpersonal drama, creating a toxic atmosphere that led to the cancellation of further appearances. With mounting pressure and little support, remaining within the production hierarchy, Zegler found herself increasingly isolated.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them.
In contrast to her previous roles, where she had been hailed as a rising star, Rachel Zegler became seen as a major source of the studio's woes. Even colleagues who admired her talent reportedly grew tired of the constant negative press. In the eyes of Disney's accountants, the financial strain was simply too much to overlook. According to the latest rumors circulating in Hollywood gossip circles, Zegler packed up and left the country entirely, an action widely interpreted as an attempt to escape the situation or, at the very least, to take a break from the relentless scrutiny.
Generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige, and it was so noticeable off the top, but it's no really knock on her.
Okay, so people that are small that could have played this role.
Yeah.
The 7 dwarfs. So actual dwarfs were like,
What is
hey.
a dwarf versus a midget?
I don't know the difference, but I know there is one. I knew one angry midget, which, by the way, I think they all are. But I knew one. He's a comic in Tacoma.
The production of Disney's Snow White remake has quickly become a chaotic saga, overshadowed by personal conflicts and mounting financial pressures. Initially pitched as a modern reimagining of the beloved classic, the film's journey has spiraled into a spectacle of behind-the-scenes turmoil, especially between co-stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. Tensions between the two actresses, fueled by creative differences and ideological clashes, quickly dominated the media narrative, shifting attention from the film's artistic vision to their public disputes. Zegler's refusal to attend a high-profile event hosted by Gadot due to political disagreements was one of the first signs of a growing divide. This refusal, alongside frequent clashes on set, set the stage for a public feud that impacted the promotional campaign. Rather than generating excitement, media coverage of Snow White became consumed by gossip about the actress's strained relationship, damaging the film's reputation. Meanwhile, Disney struggled to manage the fallout, with rumors circulating that Zegler's unavailability and the ongoing conflict were major obstacles to the film's marketing efforts. These issues culminated in the rumored demand for a refund from Disney, a rare move suggesting the studio's frustration with the escalating costs and the failure to capitalize on the star power of its leads. As the production continued, reshoots became more frequent and expensive. Insiders described a chaotic atmosphere, with entire scenes reworked to mask the lack of chemistry between Zegler and Godot. What should have been a dynamic portrayal of Snow White and the Evil Queen instead felt disjointed, and the budget ballooned out of control. Disney's financial team reportedly calculated losses tied to the numerous canceled promotional events and reshoots, further compounding the studio's growing dissatisfaction. Despite the drama, Disney clung to the hope that curiosity about the new spin on a classic would still draw audiences. However, with negative press dominating the narrative, ticket sales began to lag. Longtime fans of the original 1937 film expressed concern that the remake disregarded the charm and simplicity that made the classic so beloved. The ideological battles between Zegler and Godot only added to the confusion, turning what was meant to be a fresh take on Snow White into a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting personal beliefs and corporate interests clash so publicly. In the wake of the drama, Zegler reportedly left the country, sparking speculation that her departure was tied to Disney's demand for partial salary compensation. The decision was seen as an attempt to escape the mounting controversy, or, at the very least, to take a break from the intense media scrutiny. Meanwhile, Godot, seemingly eager to distance herself from the mess, carried on with her obligations, as quietly as possible, focusing on fulfilling her role as the Evil Queen. As the film nears its release, many industry insiders wonder how Disney will handle the aftermath. Some predict a shift to streaming if box office returns are weak, while others speculate that the studio will try to downplay Zegler's involvement in the film's publicity. For Godot, the final stages of promotion have been solitary, with her co-star's absence likely to dominate any media interactions. Ultimately, Snow White has become an example of how a film can implode under the weight of personal conflicts and public controversies. What was meant to be a magical comeback for a classic Disney story now stands as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of modern media, where behind-the-scenes turmoil can overshadow even the most visually stunning productions. The fate of the film, and whether it can recover from its troubled journey, will likely be decided by the audience, who must now choose whether they can look past the drama and still find magic in the remake.